Hey guys, Welsknight here, and welcome back to another episode from the Hermitcraft server. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I'm having a pretty fine day myself. Overslept a little bit. Just got out of the shower, got my cup of coffee, but it's all good. We are back on Hermitcraft, and today I still haven't regained my inspiration, so probably going to be another talky episode where we continue working on repaving this area and figuring some things out, trying to get this area towards completion. I really don't know if this project is going to be finished, but we'll get to it. So last episode we did a talky episode, and we kind of talked about how, Hermitcraft had been on hiatus for a couple months and all that kind of stuff, and it was fine. It was a decent episode. But somebody left a comment on that video. Tom Hale, I'm looking at the comment right now on my other monitor, and he said, "Hey Wells, I love the talky episode, and this reminds me of a question I've wanted to ask. You're obviously skilled at talking at length. Is that skill something you've learned, or is it something you're naturally talented at? Also, I'm very happy you're back with Hermitcraft." And I was thinking about it, and I thought, that's something that I don't know that I've ever actually talked about in a video. Maybe I have, but if so, we're going to talk about it again, because it's kind of an interesting story. I haven't really shared my background prior to YouTube when it comes to speaking and performing and all that kind of stuff. So that's the topic of the day. Let's talk about a little trip down Welsknight life memory lane, because it could be fun. So basically, I grew up in a home where my dad is a singer-songwriter, and my mom is a first grade teacher at a private school, a little private Lutheran school. And she teaches first, and I think she's actually teaching second grade now as well. But one of the things that my mom also does is she is also the choir director for that school, for the younger choir, the choir for kids in grades first grade through fourth grade. And for those of you who don't live in the US, grades are a little bit different here, if I remember correctly. In Europe, the grades are our preschool and kindergarten is your first and second grade or something like that. The years are a little bit different. So for us, preschoolers are generally ages 4 and 5, and then kindergartners are 5 and 6. First and second grade is 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but anyway, we're talking fairly little kids, right? And my mom is the choir director for a choir of fairly little kids, and it's really just about music and having fun and all that kind of stuff. To make a long story short, when I was growing up, obviously with my dad being a singer-songwriter and with my mom being a choir director, I grew up in a fairly musical household, and I was surrounded by music all the time. There was tons of instruments and, singing and all this other kind of musical stuff. And my mom basically said, "Son, you are going to be in choir, and you're going to like it." So, at least when I was little, I had no choice in the matter. I was going to be in choir, and that was the end of it, whether I wanted to or not. Luckily, I enjoyed it immensely. So I was in choir starting in first grade, and honestly, I basically loved choir so much that I was even in choir in college as an elective. I was part of the university the concert choir, which is the choir that sings kind of traditional music, Handel and stuff like that. And then also I was in one of the vocal jazz groups, which is a kind of a cappella sort of, if you're familiar with pentatonics, that would be kind of the type of music that we would perform in vocal jazz. When I was in high school, I was in every single choir. I even occasionally sang with the women's choir when they needed a male vocalist. I founded the show choir at my high school, or at least I was, I think a more accurate way to say that would be I was largely responsible for show choir returning to my high school, because it had existed long ago and then Due to lack of interest, it kind of disappeared, and I went to our choir director and said, we need a show choir. Give us a show choir back. And you know, that was it. We got our show choir back. But anyway, so long story short, I grew up in choir. And in addition to that, I also spent a lot of time in theater. I was in a lot of kind of, you know, plays and stuff like that. Nothing, all pretty much like school drama, you know, school theater productions. Nothing like, you know, I wasn't part of like a traveling theater troupe or anything like that. But I was in school musicals, school theater productions, things like that. I was never exceptionally good at acting. I wouldn't say I was bad. And due to my background in music, I could sing, which was a benefit because, you know, when it comes to like school productions, you don't always end up with a whole lot of male students even interested in being in the theater productions in the first place. And then on top of that, it's even less likely that those... Oh, hey, Cub. It's even less likely that those male students who want to be in theater will be able to hold a tune. And when I'm saying that, you got to realize that I went to a very, very, very small school. When I was in grade school, my entire class was like 23 people. When I was in middle school, my entire class was like 23 people. And then when I went to high school, I think my graduating class was about 100 people. So, you know, I was not part of a big school. Yeah, I'm sure there are schools out there that are smaller than the schools that I attended. But, you know, they weren't schools where you had hundreds of people auditioning to be in the theater production. It was more like, if you want to be in theater, you are totally in. We'll find a spot for you somewhere because we need people to be involved. Like that was the type of school that I went to. So it wasn't necessarily, you know, being in any of the school productions was not necessarily about talent. It was more that you just like went to the directors and said like, hey, I want to be in this play. Now getting like lead roles, that was a little bit more talent related, but anyway, so, you know, I have this background in music performance and in theater. And then on top of that, additionally, when it comes to music performance, I was also like a total band geek growing up as well. I played drums primarily, starting in, well, when I was really little, I played piano for a couple of years, from maybe like second or third grade until fourth or fifth grade. I played piano. And one of my biggest regrets in life is that I didn't stick with piano, because in fifth grade, I dropped piano and instead picked up drums, and I became a drummer, and I was a drum set player, and I was in, you know, the band and the marching band and the concert band and all the bands. I was in jazz band, polka band, you name it. I was in all, much like I was in all the choirs, I was also in all of the bands. The high school that I went to actually had a very, very strong music program for a school of its size. It seemed like just about every kid was in either band or choir, at least for the most part. And I think part of that was the fact that our music directors were just fantastic people. They're just still some of my favorite teachers that I've ever had. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So I also spent a lot of time in band. And when I was in band, you know, obviously that's performance as well, although it's not so much like public speaking, singing, vocal performance. It's really just, you know, stand in people and do your part in the group. So I don't know if that necessarily relates to my ability to speak confidently and all this other kind of stuff. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'll let you kind of decide that for yourself. But to make a very long story short, essentially due to my background in theater and music and all this other kind of stuff, I really never had, well, maybe I shouldn't say ever, but I certainly lost any semblance of stage fright that I once had, if I ever had stage fright to begin with. I was a very talkative and outgoing child, and I've always kind of been a fairly talkative and outgoing person for the most part. And then after, you know, high school, I went to college, and I was in choir and band in college, again, playing drum set. I picked up a guitar somewhere along the road. I don't remember exactly when, maybe like 6th or maybe like 7th? No. High school. I picked up guitar at some point in high school because I was trying to get a hot date. Probably knowing myself in high school, I probably picked up guitar for the ladies. But anyway, so then, eventually I joined the military. That was when I was 17. And you don't really do a whole lot of public speaking in the military at a low rank, right? Like, you don't do briefings in front of people. You occasionally, I did a couple here and there, I was a paralegal, so I did a couple of like legal briefings here and there, but nothing extraordinary or extravagant. It was pretty straightforward. Hello, hole in the ground. There's just so many holes here. This is a little ridiculous. Let's kind of bring this to like here and then call it good. I think I want to bring that wall over straight all the way. And then, some of this, we're obviously going to add some texture variation to this eventually. And, oh, I forgot that there was a mob spawner here at one point. We're going to add some texture variation, and we'll add some retaining walls and stuff to kind of make it look better down the road. But for now, I just kind of want to get this first sort of basic level of cobblestone down. But anyway, where was I? I was military. Right. Yes, I remember. So, in the military, you don't do a whole lot of public speaking at a low rank. They don't really trust a private to get up in front of a bunch of important people and tell them things. But as you kind of, spend longer in the military and you get promoted a few times and you kind of, rise up the ranks, so to speak, eventually you're expected to be able to get in front of people and talk. And by the time that I left the military, not this last... Well, actually, technically, I didn't get out of the military until this February, but for the last year or so of my contract, I wasn't really doing much. By the time I hit sergeant and staff sergeant, I got the opportunity to speak publicly on many occasions. Lots of briefings and things like that. The thing that a lot of people don't realize about the military is that there are just constant briefings for training purposes, right? They find something that everybody needs to have training about. They sit everybody down in a room, and we have like a death by PowerPoint, 563 slides on how to tie your shoelaces, or that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I gave a lot of legal briefings, which would be, kind of telling soldiers, these are the things that you can do when you're deployed, consider a will, consider a power of attorney, and all these other kind of like legal things, right? So, my job was basically to train soldiers about their options and the services that the military legal people, the JAG guys, can provide for them. That was so I did a lot of that. I did a lot of talking with commanders and just tons and tons of different things that involve speaking either to an audience or speaking to someone a lot more important than you. And when I say you, I don't mean you, the audience. I mean like a lot more important than me, right? Like speaking to a general or a full bird colonel or whatever. Because that's the way the JAG Corps is. Like, if you're an infantry guy, you're probably not spending a lot of time interacting with high-ranking officers, but as a member of the Judge Advocate General's Corps, the Army's legal branch, or legal regiment, I guess you would say, whatever you want to call them, the legal guys. I spent a lot of time interacting with high-ranking officers because that's essentially what the legal guys, that's one of their biggest jobs, is to advise and, talk with commanders and say, no, sir, you really can't do that. That's not allowed. So, yeah, that was a thing. And that also kind of helped me develop my confidence when it comes to speaking and public speaking and stuff like that. So, I kind of have always been someone who's fine with speaking and fine kind of being the center of attention and public speaking and performance and all this other kind of stuff. Like, that's always kind of been a part of who I am. But at the same time, I also very much have kind of a background in that as well, you know, in performance. And I don't really talk about it much just because it just doesn't really come up. A lot of people don't know that I'm a giant music geek and that I love singing and playing guitar and all this other kind of stuff. A lot of people don't know that I was in theater. In fact, I don't know that I've ever really mentioned it. But, you know, that part, that is part of me. That's part of who I've been and who I am. And it certainly is part of the reason that I am able to create YouTube videos the way I do, where I can just ramble on for, you know, an hour or two and not lose, not just completely lose it, you know. It's the reason that I can go on and on and on and not feel nervous behind the microphone or whatever. That's certainly kind of part of my background. It's something, just like many skills in life, public speaking is just, it's just a matter of practice. It's just a matter of becoming comfortable kind of in that role. And when you do it enough, whether because you are forced to, such as in the case of my military background, or by choice, such as in the case of my theater background, you know, it becomes natural. It's just something you do. It's just, you know, oh, these are my things that I have to say. I was also, that's something else that I didn't mention. I also did prose reading, P-R-O-S-E, not prose as in professional, but prose as in prose, which is basically like a sort of performance where you read a story or a poem or an article or something. You read something, and that's part of, and you're like judged on it by, you know, a panel of judges or by a single judge or whatever. So I did that as well, reading stories and stuff like that. And I did that in middle school. I think it was mostly middle school. I might have done a little bit of it in high school as well, but I don't really remember. But anyway, that's also kind of a background. So, you know, all of these skills kind of add up and become part of your skill set and part of your abilities, right? Like you develop this whole ability to speak publicly and confidently over time. And when I say publicly, I don't necessarily mean like standing in front of people in with an audience. It can also be just like having a conversation with your boss or, you know, someone that normally would intimidate you, right? Whether that's your boss or maybe you have a small group of people that you need to tell them something or whatever. You know, it's a practice skill, just like any other. And if it's something that you're interested in doing, if like you're interested in being a YouTuber someday, or for that matter, if you're interested in just being able to speak publicly, and I highly encourage people to get involved with like theater. Take on a lot of the performing arts will really kind of like help prepare you for that in a way that isn't necessarily advertised, for lack of a better word. Like when people are considering, you know, should I be in choir? A lot of people don't necessarily think like choir is going to give me important life skills. Like people don't necessarily think about that. And that's one of the reasons that I'm kind of like a huge advocate for the performing arts. And I, partly because it's helped shape me into the person I am today, and partly because, you know, I know that it can be a very valuable thing that can really kind of make people more confident or whatever it may be. You know, it really can help you as a person, because a lot of people are scared of public speaking. I seem to remember hearing back when I took speech class in college that public speaking is like the #1 thing that the most people are afraid of. Like it's the thing that most people, that more people than any other thing are like terrified of. And I never really saw it as kind of like a big deal, you know? I was like, oh, okay. But that's because of the background that I have. So, like, I think if I had never had that background, I think if YouTube was the very first thing that I did where I was performing, I think it would be, I would be a very different content creator. And I think my early content, not that my early content was good, mind you, it was pretty terrible. But I think my early content would have been very, very different. I know quite a few YouTubers or people who are considering YouTube who kind of create their first video and then they just never upload it because they're not happy with it, because they're scared of what people are going to think, you know, about what they're saying and all this other kind of stuff. Like they're very kind of intimidated by the idea of uploading this video that other people are going to be able to see. And I understand that. But like in the words of, oh wow, I'm having a complete and total just brain meltdown right now. Shia LaBeouf, that's the guy. My brain forgot his name. In the immortal words of Shia LaBeouf, just do it. Like, you know, when it comes to that first YouTube video, create it and then just upload it. And who cares how bad it is? Because, like, spoiler alert, it's gonna be terrible. Everybody's first YouTube videos are horrible. But the only way that you get better is by doing it. And if you never actually upload that first video, then, you know, you'll never be given that chance to improve. You know, you'll never be able to look at it and go like, okay, what can I do better here? Or, oh, I say a lot of this and that. You know, I say, and a lot, or I do this, or, you know, whatever these various different, everybody has these own little like kind of, speech mannerisms that they sort of struggle with. I certainly have a couple myself. There are things that I say often, a lot. Like a so is one that I've been known to repeat over and over and over again. Well, more like I generally just say like so instead of like a so, but you know, there's a couple of them that I've been known to kind of pick up and just repeat all the time, and it is what it is. We need another shulker box. You, boop, and let's just grab all of those. That should be enough to completely fill this thing. Yep, there we go. Toss you in here, and there we go. And cobblestone, please. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, when it comes to public speaking, or YouTube, or honestly, like any job whatsoever in which you will ultimately interact with people, which, by the way, is most jobs, I highly encourage you to look into, you know, theater, performing arts. Look into the performing arts. Look into theater. Look into choir. You know, and keep in mind, even if you're out of school, I mean, it's a lot easier to be in theater or choir or band or whatever if you're still in school. If you're still you know, middle school, high school, college, whatever, it's a lot easier because those programs are kind of offered and you don't really have to do anything too extraordinary to get involved. But even if you're old enough to be out of high school and stuff like that, you can get involved with like community theater. My sister actually has gotten very involved in her community theater, and she's actually directing a play right now. I forget. I'm unfortunately not going to get a chance to go see it because, you know, she's up in Wisconsin where I grew up, and I'm down in Tennessee where I live now. And as much as I would love to see it, it's just not feasible for me to travel that far for it. But, you know, I mean, community theater can be great for that too, for kind of building that skill set and building that repertoire and that ability to sort of speak and be comfortable. So I would highly encourage people who are either intimidated by public speaking or who are considering becoming involved with YouTube, you know, any of those sorts of things. I would highly encourage you to consider and look at the performing arts because they've done quite a lot to prepare me for, you know, this, for YouTube. And on top of that, just remember that it's a practice skill like any other. It's something, it's a skill set that you develop over time, over many years, and you become more and more confident, and eventually, you know, it kind of clicks for you. It takes a while to kind of develop that ability, and it's not something that happens overnight. So, you know, if it's something you want to do, get practicing, because there's only one way to develop that skill, and that is to practice. But I've probably rambled on enough about this topic. The too long didn't watch is that I grew up in the performing arts theater, band, choir. I also did a lot of public speaking when I was an NCO in the military, and as a result, I am perfectly comfortable with public speaking and performance and stuff like that today. So there you go. Guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Links in the description below, so check that out as well. Otherwise, my friends, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.